Welcome to the Extra Time Podcast, where you'll hear sports stories you might not have heard about from people you might not have heard of. Let's get into this week's show.
G'day all and welcome in to another episode of the Extra Time Podcast. I'm again here with my good mate Mark Woods. I am Aidan Box and we're very colourful today on the podcast because out of nowhere, against all odds, both of our teams won again on Saturday alongside Bodie Stringer's North Melbourne Footy Club. Also got their first win on the season. It was an extra time 3 for 3. We're going to park the footy though and we're going to talk a few other things before it. But Woods, how you going?
I'm doing all right. I don't know why you made me wear the Saints jumper after the past few weeks of me tearing into him about being frustrating to watch. But I'll leave my other comments for later as something big happened this past Monday and I want to talk about that shortly. But what have you got for us first?
Well, we've got a new segment again. That's why we play. I think it's really important each week to highlight something that happened that wasn't specific to the sport, a play or a goal or the like. Something that is more why you play the game, more human, more real. And this week it is, I'm going to butcher his name, but Parramatta's Joe Ofahengawe in the tackle, in an incident with, I think that's the Bulldogs' Josh Curran. He was just immediately, didn't matter where the ball was or what happened out of the play, Joe went over and made sure Josh was all right. He was knocked out immediately in a tackle. I think his head collided with Joe or one of his fellow teammates' sort of hip area, knocked him out clean, and he was on the ground. It was quite an ugly scene. Usually players would sort of just run around and follow the ball and focus on the game, but Joe, in an incredible act of sportsmanship, went over to Josh immediately, made sure he was in the recovery position and waited by his side in this position until the trainers got out there, which is just, it's phenomenal.
Good sportsmanship.
That's why we play, because everybody's out there. They're all humans. It's a game, but they're all humans playing it, and life is always more important. I know, and it's nowhere near, the fear or the weight of being knocked out and not being conscious. But when I was injured, probably my most serious injury in sport was when I tore my ACL, and I was lucky enough to have my teammate Marcus come over and look after me straight away. And it's just so important. Like maybe Josh might not have been conscious. He might not have even known Joe was there. But for Joe to come over and do that, it's not even his teammate either.
I was about to say, like, one of the biggest things that I get from this image is you can take the top off, basically. Take the colours you're wearing off. There's another human in distress, another human injured, and your first instinct is, you know what? No, I'm focused on that. That's what I love about this. And
the fact that this was celebrated perhaps more, I saw more about this than the actual result or any highlights from the game, and that's exactly why I love stuff like this, and that's why we play. And it was a clear, easy choice this week. Eventually, Josh Curran was taken away on the Medicab, so we're wishing him all the best. But what Joe did for him is going to help tenfold no matter what. A close second this week, and I don't want to say close second because it's equally as amazing.
I started by saying like something that is being celebrated, and I mean, I'll chuck this first one up because I think this is amazing. $3 million raised, and
we spoke about it last week.
Having a family member who actually had MND, so my cousin's husband's father battled with the disease, David McSkimming. It was, you see firsthand. Now, you see firsthand from what they were like beforehand to then what they're like during it and the process and just their freedoms and independence taken away. And, I mean, I think you can see it with Neil. I think that's one of the biggest things is you see it with you got to see it with Neil, and it's sad, it's hard to watch, and it's just amazing to see the community, though, rally around.
100%. And for this amount of money to be raised, it was their goal. But often you can set goals, especially with money, especially in a day like we live in today, where it is very hard to live off with things being, so inflated and whatnot. You can talk about that. That'll be a different podcast. We don't want to talk about cost of living. But for people to all chip in, get around this for $3 million, that's going to do so much, not just for Neil. It's not for Neil. It's for everybody. It's for everybody, their family, everybody they've ever interacted with that's been affected by motor neuron disease. And like you said, like the people that are close to your life that have been affected, Woods, $3 million is going to go so far. And for me, it's the fact that Neil's been affected so much by this. He's deteriorated so much, but his spirit has not once even by a millimetre wavered at all. He shows up every single year. He still goes to the clubs. He still gives passionate rev-ups, even though he can't actually physically speak, which is incredible. And he comes out and there's no embarrassment. It's just all pride, and he's just fighting this thing to its wit's end. And at the moment, yes, he's deteriorated, but Neil Danaher is winning. Like $3 million more. This family is truly remarkable, and it makes me proud. I don't even know any of these guys, but it makes me so proud.
Well, as Ben and Beck Danaher, the kids, I know Ben he played at Blackburn.
Plays at Moe now, I believe.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where the connection from Blackburn, if you've been watching the podcast, you know I do cheer on the Burners quite a bit. And I've actually taken a photo of him a few years ago, and it's of him in action. And it's just great family. And to see them get around, and they put in the hard yards, they put in the groundwork. And, yeah, to see $3 million, and I think it was over $100 million raised over the last 10 years, thanks to Fight MND. That is, it's beyond comprehension that something that has no cure, yet people are still going, you know what, like.
And it's as little as people buying beanies, like we wear on the podcast. It's started with that, and now it is so big. 100 million, like you mentioned, is remarkable. Kids get around it. Everybody in the stadium gets around it. And it spans sports. It's that powerful. Not only did we mention last week, it's gone to country and suburban football around the country, which we thought was pretty remarkable. But then I was listening to SEN last week, and I heard that it's gone to Super Netball now. It's into sports, which is incredible. So the Super Netball on the weekend was, you could probably call it the new Melbourne Derby. The new Melbourne Mavericks and the Vixens went head-to-head, and they was all Big Freeze themed. It was on Monday morning as well, so sort of a lead-in to the AFL's Big Freeze, the original. I absolutely love that. The Vixens got a pretty easy win, you could say. There's a bit of a skill gap, you could say, between them and the expansion team, the Mavs, but that's not what it was about. It was about all the girls getting involved, wearing the beanies. The crowd was all wearing the beanies. There was activations around John Cain Arena. And it's phenomenal because it had people going to that and then walking, 5 minutes over to the G and going to the G, all for one cause. And these are the reasons why it's so successful, because us as a nation realise when something's bigger than sport, you throw 100% at it. And I absolutely love that. Both professional players, administrators, and then fans alike. And that's a really good segue to our footy talk. And again, I'm going to start with something that wasn't the actual game, and this week our photo of the round isn't the game at all. It's just the sea of blue, and it's phenomenal. I heard a few of the commentators say, Mark Robinson on 360 Monday night said, I was here both days, and I know you can see it on the television, but when we were looking out of our media box on Monday, the amount of blue was just mesmerising, and this is exactly what it's all about. You could probably count on one hand how many people don't have beanie on in that photo. And it doesn't matter if you have this year's or whatever.
I can see a Big Freeze 7, but
even the Bub's got it on here in the first row. Unbelievable.
Big Freeze. I love it. And I love the fact that it becomes such a part of your wardrobe. When they get released, you buy it, and it's basically becomes the wardrobe for the next year or the winter. Next few weeks, the next few months.
Especially being Victorian, very helpful, that's for sure. I was wearing it on my call on the weekend down at Tooradin. It was raining and it was freezing cold, so it comes in handy. But great to see the crowd all in blue, just caked in blue. Was brilliant. But it's time to talk a little bit of footy, and we're going to go over the round that was. My overall thoughts was last week, all everyone was talking about, how good Sunday going to be? How good Sunday into Monday going to be? Turns out, Woods, that the Saturday games, the Thursday and the Friday night game, were almost better of a spectacle in terms of close games, especially Saturday, when extra time, as I mentioned off the top, we went 3 for 3, and you'll never see this. All year you wouldn't see this, mostly because North hadn't got a win yet. But the Hawks, the Saints, and the Kangaroos getting a win on the same day, I don't think that the odds of that before the season would have probably been over 1 million to 1. But it happened. We'll touch on our games, obviously, a bit later. Bodie obviously would be loving his, that's for sure. The Kangas showed so much fight, but all very close games as well. And they went right down to the wire. Every single one of these went down to the final moments, which was great to see. And I just thought that's so good for footy because everybody was looking forward to Sunday. Just get me to Sunday when the top 4 teams play, when the top 8 teams all play. And Saturday, when everyone thought, oh, I'll just go to the local footy, I won't watch these games, they turned it on, which is great to see. It all started with the Tigers, though, and they've finally been rewarded for what I was just harping on about, is phenomenal effort week in, week out. They pushed Essendon to the end, they pushed Geelong to the end, and finally they pushed Adelaide to the end, and they got the 4 points they were so keen for, so hard going forward, which is great. On the Crows side of things, pretty ugly. I was really happy on them. If you watched our podcast a few weeks ago after the midway point, I had them jumping in the 8 because their best footy probably had them there, but they're looking like they're no chance now. I think they'll be the next club to go through one of those internal reviews, Woods. I think it'll be pretty ugly coming in the next few weeks. I think they're going to look at a few of their administrators, not just the coach and the players. So could get ugly in Adelaide, but it wasn't a great showing from them at home on Thursday night. The Lions are back to their best. I'm not sure if they can contend still, though. They were great, but they just don't show it, and that's exactly like the team they beat, the Dogs. They're also great at times, but they don't always show it. So I don't think you can back either of these teams with any sort of confidence because you don't know what you're going to get week to week. It was a pretty good game, though. Eric Hipwood back to his best. Bontempelli put out of it by Jared Berry, and the defensive midfielder, or the tagger, back in fashion. Great to see. I'm sure we'll discuss that when we talk Saints. The Cats... Well, Lorenzo won't like us talking about this, so we'll go pretty quickly over it. They kicked the first 6 to none. Sydney did not kick a goal in the first quarter. Unheard of this season.
I was watching this with my great mate, our great mate Noah Fisher, and he was a bit worried, and I just went, you can't be.
Thinking, 2022 grand final, it's happening again. The Swans can't come back from here. Not only did they come back, they gave up the first 6 goals, goalless at quarter time. They won by 6 goals.
Now, there was an Instagram post by AFL Central, and it was Chris Scott going, no, he's done it again. And one of the comments was, no, don't write Sydney off. It'll be Swans by 30. This was in the first. This was like first quarter when Geelong were up, and it was somebody just kicked a goal from the pocket, but it was like. You can't ride Sydney off. They've got one of the 3 best. I reckon they've got number 1 in terms of their midfield.
They've got one of the best midfields.
Goulden, Warner, and
I'll go as far
Heaney.
As history. One of the best midfields in history. If you're looking at a.
Well, you're salivating at that side if you're going for them with that midfield.
It seriously, like we've had a lot of midfielders over the way, where they've had 3 midfielders get so much of the footy. Like the Dogs have done it for years. Bont, Treloar, McRae, they just get heaps of footy. Maybe Bont will kick a few goals every now and then.
I was going to say, you have one usually you have one standout. Like
this
during Richmond's time, you had Martin as the big standout. Yeah, you had others.
And he kicked goals, but the others
you can't think of, like, if you were to name the other 3, it would be like Cochin.
Great. He was great.
Yeah.
Prestia, great.
But
they're all great.
Warner, Goulden, and Heaney.
They don't kick goals, though. So these 3 on the weekend. Goulden had 37. Warner had 26. Heaney had 26. So you think, oh, yeah, that's all right. They're pretty good midfield. And they kicked 5 goals between them. Like, they break the game open. They tear the game to shreds because they kick goals. They hit scoreboard. Heaney had 4 shots at goal and 26. Woodsy can't believe it. He's throwing the toys out the cot. It's just like, seriously, how do you stop them? We're talking about, I mentioned taggers briefly before. You can't. You can't even tag them because there's 2 other ones. What, you're going to bring 3 taggers in, then you don't have anyone winning the footy for you. The headaches coming up against this team would be incredible because they're so well built, they're connected, they express each other like we were saying a few weeks ago. It's have this brotherhood, which, like, how do you actually snap that? I actually think anyone can. Their football is so far ahead, it is actually going on a joke right now. Chris Scott, who is obviously one of the best coaches in the comp, one of the most accomplished, can always bring his team back to the top. Like, he had them beat, and then all of a sudden they just come out from nowhere And there would have been a few demons as well, because a lot of these players in this game played in the 2022 Grand Final, and that didn't bother them either, because they just back themselves in, they look after each other, they know each other like the back of their own hands, and the form that they're in right now, if it stays that way, no one's going to stop them on their way to the Cup. So, remarkable effort from the Swans there. Very, very scary. The midfield, I said a few weeks ago, they've accounted for 500 of their points. It's just phenomenal. I haven't quite seen it happened ever in football before, something like that. And then we moved on to Sunday night. Everyone was so keen for this. Probably one of the most hyped games in a long time. Two rivals, hadn't been this good.
No, I think you're missing the big point of this game, and this was almost photo of the week. The Mackay brothers finally faced off against each other.
And it was an absolute letdown, because neither of them really did much. There was a point in the first quarter where Harry got the free kick off Ben. But the best thing that came out of that was Jared Waitley's call. If you didn't listen to it, he said, Mum came in and said, that's not on. The box loved it. It was great. Jared's phenomenal. But for me, I thought, it'd be great if Ben, can grab a few intercept marks and sort of spoil him from possession. But Harry still had a decent game, but Harry didn't go and kick 5. And he didn't need to, because Carlton beat them that badly that it was never like Ben was able to be in the game. It was never like Harry needed to go up and kick 5, and Charlie didn't either, because for me, watching that game, and I was there, my favourite part of the game was every time Sard would get the ball, there'd be a massive boo. And the Essendon crowd was unreal. The loudest I've heard an Essendon crowd in my life. It was phenomenal. They were easily drowning out the Carlton fans. So every time Saab would get the ball, huge boost from the Bombers fans. And then he released the ball by foot, massive woof from the Blues fans. It was, go watch a replay of the game, wait for Saad to get the footy, and it was just woof. It was phenomenal. But I just think Carlton got the win, and it wasn't through their superstars, it was through their role players, and I think Carlton's bottom 6 at the moment are winning them their games. Yeah, well, their bottom 6 is phenomenal, and that is the main reason I've got them going really deep this year, because they're such a complete team now, and they've got guys that just hustle. Like, they're not going to be flashy, they're not going to have 30, they're not going to kick 5 goals. They're not going to do anything special, they probably won't have a single highlight, but they just hustle and hustle and hustle, put pressure on, and they play exactly how they have to, up to their role, no further, no less.
Yeah, well, this is one of the things with Carlton. It's, you look at it and it's like, not their best game of football, yet they easily did it.
And half of it was Essendon's mistakes.
I was going to say, does it beg the question about Essendon, where they're in the top 4, although I don't know where they are after this game, but they were in the top 4, well comfortable, and the teams that they've beaten were teams lower than 6th, I think.
Yeah, only one of them was in the 8.
So it goes to show that they needed to step up in this game, and not necessarily they didn't need to win the game, they just needed to be competitive.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest things is when you're playing against teams that are there or thereabouts with you, you don't need to win, you need to be able to show that you can go with it. I didn't see Essendon being able to go with Carlton, and Carlton weren't playing at their best. And that's a scary thought to see that, hold on, Carlton at, say, 60, 70, 75, 80% is better than Essendon didn't really show up at all, but you're there going...
Well, the Bombers had plenty more inside 50s. They had more shots at goal as well. And they kicked 9-16, which we'll discuss shortly in another segment. But it was just the way that they were just butchering the football. And in that third quarter, I was actually in the SEN AFL Nation box, and the whole room was so frustrated. And we weren't all even Bomber supporters. It was that frustrating because they'd get the footy, they were winning the footy, they were dominating ball in the middle of the ground, and then they just sit it straight up. And, oh, wait, what happens when you sit it straight up against Carlton? Oh, Wiedering's there, Boyd's there, Kemp's there. Like, it was just clearly not working, but every time they'd go in there, even experienced players like Heppel just turn when he had 10 seconds of time to turn and hit someone. He just bomb it straight up because, you got Peter Wright down there. But the good thing for the Bombers, they've got the bye this weekend. They can use this game as a real learning curve. And often when you're coming up, you haven't played finals the year before, and you're solidly in the top 4, you're going to have a game like this where you've got to learn, and you're not going to win. And often you can actually learn a lot more when you lose and play horribly. So I think they'll come out in their next game rejuvenated. Likewise, the D's, they need to find something like that because they were equally as awful with the football. They should have had 6 goals at quarter time. Instead, they barely had 1. And Collingwood, without playing anywhere near their best, got the job done quite easily by 6 goals. In the end, on the King's birthday, instead of Queen's birthday, King's birthday, the big freeze, and it was a Collingwood team that barely had half of their stars in. So quite a big win for the Pies. They can now knock on the door of the top 4, and I think they'll end up making it after their tough start. But yeah, not good enough from the D's, and now they obviously lose Christian Petrarca, which is huge for them. And it was such a tough guy. Like, he played a quarter with a lacerated lung, 4 broken ribs. It's just like crazy. And he was the only one that kept going in and looking like he was caring. So hats off to Track. All the best in his recovery. But yeah, it was a bit embarrassing from Melbourne. Collingwood got the win. Another team that got the win, and Woods, I feel like people will just think I just live here and I sleep here because I wear the same thing every week at the moment. And I really wanted to wear something else this week, but I made the promise to myself when it was looking bleak at the start of the season, when the Hawks win, I will wear the jumper. So we won again, and I'm wearing the jumper, and I'll say it again and again and again, mate. Sam Mitchell is a top 5 coach in this competition. He just is. And if anyone wants to dispute that, go ahead. I'm sure not many will at the moment. At the moment, people are probably agreeing with me. But just make sure, and you have this on record, that I said this months ago, so I was probably the first to say it. So I know my football. I know my Hawks. And Sam's just so perfect of a coach for it because he's a bit on the younger side in comparison to the others. He understands that they're all a bit, loose. Dan Gorringe described the Hawks as cool. They do it a little bit differently. They're not by the book. Sam said that the rascal pack. And it's just, I cannot, I just want to sit here and smile for my admiration for this group because they are so bloody fun to watch and support because they're all just having fun. Even when the Hawks were losing at the start of the year, they were still just being rascals and enjoying it because why not? Like, even if you're losing, still have fun and learn from it because it's just a game at the end of the day and it's bleeding into the way that they play. I love all these guys because they just express their personality on the field, and that's made Hawthorn so much better because in the first 4 or 5 rounds before our first win, it looked like there was not much personality. They were flat. It looked a bit bland, the way that they were playing. Then all of a sudden, the first win we had, the second win against the Saints, there was just all this personality. There was flair. Everyone was exciting. And they've just gone from height to height off the back of it. And Sam Mitchell, obviously on the weekend, he was that good. Half the staff couldn't even get to the game till about half time because there was fog in Launceston, so they were grounded in Hobart for an hour. They had to get in the car and drive 2 hours at 1 o'clock. The game was at 1:45. It was an absolute shambles. Didn't bother the Hawks, though. I don't know what else to say about this mob. At the start, I was a little bit worried, and I had to watch the replay because scheduling in the AFL is awful, and I was working on Saturday Arvo. But the first half, if I was watching live, I would have been pretty furious because the kicking was awful. But they fixed it up. In the third quarter, they kicked, I think it was 4 goals, and they were barely missed. Cleaned it up, luckily. And in the end, if they had a kick straight, we probably would have won by 5 goals. But again, just electric football. Like, why is, no disrespect, mate, why is St Kilda playing on prime time when an electric team like this is an option? They still continue to give Hawks Saturday twilight, Saturday afternoon, Sunday afternoon games. Get these Hawks on prime time footy, I'm telling you. People will tune in. You'll get more money from your broadcast deal. People will go. But I want to bring up the contrast because I'm aware that I'm taking every win as it comes and not taking it for granted. So we might not win another game. So I just wanted to bring up those first 5 rounds, like I was saying. The ball would go in our forward 50 and it would come out in probably less than 3 seconds. There was no forward pressure, like none, 0. There was no, like, they were trying to play fast, but then at times they were trying to control the footy, but they didn't have any idea where they were going with it. They were letting teams just walk out of the middle of the ground. The defence was okay, but it wasn't really playing with vigour. And then all of a sudden, guys like Marbior Chol, who I was very, very negative on because of his effort, is taking hangers, run-down tackles, just supplying everything in the air, competing for everything. The forward pressure has gone from 0 to over 300 on the Fox footy gauge, it feels like. And it feels like half the Hawthorn games are played inside their forward half because the pressure is so high and the defences are just have no idea where to go when they're coming out, which is a complete opposite to what was happening. And I think that's half of it, which doesn't get talked about too much, is that Hawthorn press, which was so strong in the three-peat. And I think that's come straight from Sam because he would have been a great director of that when he was playing. He's brought that in. Teams can't move the football. The Hawks defend the ground so well. And then there's this, post-clearance ground ball thing, which I actually saw a few weeks ago on Footy Classified. Kane Corns was talking about it, and Champion Data had actually come and said, this is incredible. There's barely been a team in history that have done this better than the Hawks. And he was basically talking about who wins the ball once it's been cleared. So obviously, if you know AFL footy, there'll be a stoppage or a little scramble of play. And then when the ball gets away from that by kick, handball, punch, whatever, that's a clearance. So in the AFL right now, this was a few weeks ago, but I'm sure it hasn't changed too much. Hawthorn are plus 99 on the second best team in the comp at winning that ball after it's been cleared, which just shows the amount of hunger and grit that they're playing with and the hunt. Like there was no hunt in the first 5 rounds. Now there is this immense hunt to put pressure on when they don't have the ball, win the ball when it's in dispute, and then go on with it once Hawthorn have it. It's phenomenal. I do want to give credit to the Giants, though. Guys like O'Halloran and Daniels, those hustlers I was talking about before, the Giants had a lot of them, and those guys stepped up. But Will Day and Jack Scrimshaw were just equally the same for Hawthorn, and they sparked guys up like CJ, who's had a pretty down couple of weeks. He was amazing. And everybody lifts. So when someone gives a massive play, a 1%er or hustles for a play, the whole team lifts, which just speaks to their connection. And the final thing I want to talk about the Hawks, I know it's been a long one this week, but we knocked off the first top 8 team this year. So it's a pretty big win. And it's these leaders. And I think I showed this photo a few weeks ago. But these are my Hawks. These are the ones I grew up with. So it's really special for me. Because at the start of the season, they were awful. And everybody at Hawthorn was calling for Jack Gunston to just play the rest of the season in the twos. And he was. He was playing in the twos at that stage. Because he could not get near the football. He was getting outpaced by every defender he was playing on. He couldn't mark it in the air. He was too slow. You couldn't put pressure on. He's kicked multiple goals in like 3 straight weeks now. He looks unstoppable. He looks like 2014 Jack Gunston again. And James Sicily, who came out and said, this is my worst year. It's just like he's gone leaps and bounds from where he was. And he's dug in. And it's behind these young kids who are, like I said before, eating off each other's energy, hunting the footy and hunting these wins with immense energy, being rascals. And that's lightened up James Sicily. He loves that sort of thing. And the other guys do too. So it's just phenomenal. And then the final one, it's Luke Bruce, who is my boy of the week. And this will sound pretty crazy to some people because Will Day had a mega game and Daisy will be my runner-up. But this guy, at the start of the season, he was playing from the start of games and he was getting, 2 touches a game. He was turning the ball over more than I've ever seen in his whole career. He looked too slow. It looked like he didn't really have a place on the field where he could actually get a kick and affect the game. And since he's been starting as a sub in this energetic pump-up and, reconciliation of the season where they've just recharged and come from the depths of, hell against Sydney, every game when he comes on as the sub, he affects it in some sort of way. And if he hadn't come on as a sub in the last few weeks, we don't win a few of these games. It's as simple as that. It's back to the best of Bruce. And I don't know what else to give credit for this for other than these young kids and their energy and Sam Mitchell and the way that he's just kept faith in this team and the way that they play. Obviously on the weekend, if you didn't see it, kicked 2 clutch fourth quarter goals, found space, set up another one. And this last one, yes, if you want to argue that it shouldn't have been his free kick, if you want to argue that it shouldn't have gone downfield, sure. But finished from the boundary, kicked the winning goal. We won by that goal, and he absolutely loved it. So Luke Bruce, easily my boy of the week. But Will Day, I mean, what better to say about him than this? Like Matty Lloyd, pretty good pundit to give this sort of praise. Like he was a megastar, Matty Lloyd. They know what they're talking about, and the Hawks getting so much credit now. But I was giving them credit 2 months ago when they turned this thing around. and it was most of it was behind Will Day and his return. And he's everything, inside, outside, skill, hunger, defence, attack, mega. So he was very close, but Bruce is my boy of the week. Another win to the Hawks and a massive game this weekend, trying to spoil Dusty's 300th. But Woods, enough about them, because you've got the jumper on this week, and it hasn't been on in quite a while.
I mean, it's something that's frustrating footy now. I can't even remember who we played before West Coast. No, I'm guessing...
Might have been Melbourne.
No, it was Gold Coast and West Coast, that's right. But just being able to get 2 in a row, but we're not playing exciting footy. We're not playing your team's type of footy. And I'm like, it's frustrating to watch. And I've had people going, oh, well, why was there only 19,000 on a Saturday night, prime time at Marvel, under the roof? The way we're playing is frustrating, and it's our skill errors, our fundamentals. So, yes, we got the win, but it's nothing to write home about. I mean, it was one of the worst games of football in years. It reminds me of when St Kilda played Sydney back in 2005, I want to say. Well before your time of watching footy, I'm sure. But I can just remember there was a game that was very similar to this, and you can look up the scores of what it actually was. But it was put you to sleep football.
This was very similar. It was 29-15 at halftime, 43-35 at three-quarter time. And the final score, less than 100, which is total.
I'm pretty sure it was very similar to it was during the season, and I'm trying to pull it up, round 10.
It's interesting. It's just how the Saints play. They just play that defensive slog sort of footy, but like you say, it's not getting people to the game. And at the start of the season, it wasn't getting you too many wins. So it's an interesting one.
It might not have been 2005, but it was around that era. Actually, no, I think it might have been Ross Lyon era, so it would have been 08, 09.
There's no surprises there.
Yeah. Grant Thomas was 05, so my mistake for that time period, but I reckon it was Ross Lyon. But it just goes to show. But I think there are a few shining lights out of this. Now, I showed this photo last week, and I'm going to show it again because Marcus Windhager, you've got your boy of the week, and this is... Right now, this is my boy of the moment. This week, he had Took Miller. 14 disposals, 2 tackles, 2 score involvements, Miller. To Marcus Windhager, 15 disposals, 5 tackles, 4 score involvements. Now, they're highlighting the effectiveness of a tagger. And Marcus Windhager is one of the best in the game right now. Takes me back to the Stephen Baker days, the Ryan Crowley days of Freo. You have a set tagger to just quieten down one of the better players of the opposition, basically to make them void of any effectiveness, and it works.
Oh, I absolutely love it. And that was one of the main stories last weekend across the round, because it was opened on multiple occasions. Tag is back in fashion. They tried it last year. They tried to bring it back. Finn McGuinness was pretty good for my Hawks, but not on every occasion.
Well, you mentioned him on Dacos, and I think Windhager is taking a leaf out of Finn's book.
But McGuinness was good on a few occasions when he was brought in, but Windhager does this every single week. We saw Chincotta or Sincotta do it for Carlton. We've seen players, even at half-back, do it on at half-forward, do it on forwards, on defenders. So, James Jordan on Tom Stewart. But most notably for mine was Jared Berry on Marcus Bontempelli. And yes, Bont kicked a couple goals because he's just the best player in the comp and he's going to get away at some point. But I think he had 3 touches at halftime. That is just phenomenal. And Hawthorn have been doing it sort of under the radar with Connor Nash. And it's, for me, there's a little gap between a full-on tagger and a defensive midfielder. And I think Connor Nash is more of a defensive mid. I don't think he's a full tagger. Like, he doesn't go everywhere with the person, but he goes to every stoppage with them, and he's a big body, and he's able to stop someone, but he gets plenty of the football, plenty of clearances himself. So defensive midfielder, tagger, whatever you want, it's back, and I think every team needs one. And I think if you don't have one, you're gonna lose out. And obviously Nashi on the weekend was probably going to go to Tom Green, but then there was ruck issues. Ned Reeves didn't even play. I think he played about half and a little bit of the game. So the Hawks won the game without a real ruckman. I think Josh Weddle was in the ruck in the second half, Nashi, Kalshadir, so that was mega. But yeah, Marcus Windhager for me is an absolute megastar of the comp. I think they need to add a tagger's position to the All-Australian team and put him in, because insane job, and I love it because midfielders are so good these days. They get so much of the football and they're so damaging. You need them. Neil Bullen did it really well on Dacos on the weekend. It did absolutely nothing to help them win because Collingwood was way better. But it's vital these days, and I really like seeing it from Windhager Woods. And controversially, you're able to get the win from it.
Yeah, well, that's it. Controversially, I mean, the Max King thing, I can't speak too much of it because I didn't watch too much of the game, but it happens. The thing is, stuff like that happens throughout the game, but is only highlighted if it's in the last few minutes and if it's the thing that actually wins a game. So there could have been controversial calls. I think there were... It
happened 3 times, all 3 games on Saturday.
Yeah, I feel like... But the thing is, right, and I know people are like, oh, the umpires, they miss so much decision. It works both ways. So we had Jack Speechley commenting about, Gold Coast aren't getting frees for the umpires.
The yeah.
And I'm there going, hold on. I can count a few ones that St Kilda didn't get, or I can go St Kilda. There are a few softs at free kicks paid to St Kilda. I can highlight that. I think it works both ways, and at the end of the day, the umpires are human. It's a human adjudicated sport, and unless you want to get it to the point where, okay, there's no umpires on field, and guess what? It's all going to be electronic, which I don't think you want.
And no one wants that.
And I don't think you want it to go down the cricket route where you can challenge a call quickly. So it's like VAR. No, I think the VAR is the perfect example. You don't want VAR in AFL.
Yeah, the goal reviews take long enough.
Like, imagine it's, okay, well, a VAR system, the umpires will then put their whistle away because they know that it's going to be picked up by a video ref. It's like, I don't understand the over complaining of umpire decisions, because the more you complain about it, the more you're there going in favour of these technology-based decisions.
I think part of it is people just want the umpires to be better because they've been horrible this year.
No, I think that's been... I don't care about if they're... I honestly... This is probably the most controversial thing. I don't care how bad an umpire is. I honestly... Local footy to the AFL, I don't care if there's an umpire that's bad. I want an umpire to be consistent. So if you're going to pay a shocking decision one way, you pay it both ways. It happens at local footy, and it's the thing that frustrates me is I'll see a blatant throw, and then 2 seconds later we get the ball, we get tackled, and it's disposal of the ball and it's a throw. Or it's incorrect disposal. It's like, I've seen that.
Yeah.
I'm just I don't care about the fact that, okay, it was a shocking call that was missed. I'm there going, hold on, if you're going to put the whistle away for one and not the other, and it's over time, it's like, hold on, holding the ball, I think, is a perfect example. What is holding the ball? And it's been something that's been brought up so recently, and they've cracked down on it, but it's, hold on, can you tell me what holding the ball is? Can you tell me what a incorrect disposal is? Can you tell me what insufficient intent is? If you in a game, and I'm only talking about in the confines of one game, if that is made clear that, okay, you pay a free kick early on, the expectation to me is that type of free kick will be paid throughout the game.
Yeah. I think consistency is really important as well, but I think umpires would just be better, full stop, because it's on them to keep the game safe. And a lot of the free kicks were brought into the game for safety purposes. And when they're not being paid, or they're being let go, or they're, just straight up calling stupid things that aren't there, and then not calling things that endanger someone.
Well, once again, but that's about being consistent.
It's just also being a decent umpire. And they've been horrible this year, which endangers the players and it endangers results. which endangers money, and it's such a big thing. But we could go on for ages about it, but I think it's time to get into bad kicking is bad football. And the first off the rank for me is the West Coast Eagles, and I feel bad about this one because a lot of their behinds, especially in the first quarter, were rushed, were almost got there sort of things. Might not have technically been their kicking's fault, but the fact that they were absolutely butchering the football and never even looked like coming back for the first 3 quarters, the way that they were using it, I wasn't watching. I wish I was because my great mate Jack Hutchinson was making his debut, but I was watching it on the radio, and it was the best commentary ever because they were doing so well on not being negative, but they had every right to, because the sound of their tone was just, West Coast just have nothing right now. They don't look like they're even close to getting anywhere near the game, because when they get the football, they can't move it the way that they're kicking it, the way that they're trying to dispose of this football. It looks like they don't actually care about their disposal, and that's half of it. Caring about your teammates, not about them getting a stat, about actually giving them a football that they can use and they can dispose of and score with. And that's not what West Coast were doing. They deserved to lose that game no matter how good their fight back was. And it's one of their worst performances of the season for me, and it was very tough for Jack to debut in a game like that. On the other end of that, the North Melbourne stat that we loved, that they'd kicked a goal in every single game, is over. And it's over on both sides because they went goalless, but they won the game.
Yeah.
So maybe they need to just have more goalless first quarters.
Just have a goalless quarter every now and then and go with the win. But I think now that that stat is broken, it won't happen.
Yeah. It was a great game from North. Josh Singram really stood up for them, and it was a huge win. He was massive. 2 goals for him. Yes, it was controversial at the end, but he and Sheasel, Wardlaw, and that midfield, Davies Uniacke was mega. And if we had a segment that was 1%ers, which maybe we'll bring in, Tristan Xerri's rundown on Liam Ryan out of the middle was just phenomenal. Big ruckman ran probably 50 metres to chase him down, affected the kick for a turnover. Was mega. So well done to North. Back on to bad kicking though, the Bombers and the Demons almost just rinse and repeat from Sunday night to Monday afternoon. Just, like I mentioned the Bombers before, just turning the football in 30 metres of space, bombing it to a pack inside forward 50. Like under 12 footballers know that if that's being done and not working, you stop. How do these senior footballers, like hundreds of gamers, like Heppel, Merritt, who's having an All-Australian season, how do you not just go, all right, lads, stop this. Let's try and hit someone. Let's take a mark on the wing, go inside, go, oi, like, come on. I was absolutely befuddled by it, watching it from the G. I was sitting there like, how has this gone on for 25 minutes? Every single entry was just bomb. Just bomb it in, just go as high as you can, bomb it. Oh, we got Peter Wright down there. And Weeders and the Carlton defence was going, oh, you beauty, look at this. But it was such an awful game to watch. And I actually said it in one of our group chats, worst quarter I've ever watched. Because they were bombing it up, Carlton were getting easy pickings, but the Bombers were playing so well through the middle of the ground that the Blues couldn't get it through. So their midfielders and their defenders were using the ball brilliantly. So this isn't on them. They're not on the wall of shame. That's not their fault. It's the mids, the forwards, the half forwards and the attacking midfielders and the forwards that were just butchering the footy. 9-16, I think they kicked. Lost the game. That's why they lost the game. They had more shots. They had 20 more inside 50s. Lost the game because of it. Deserved to be here. Horrible. Melbourne, again, they should have been 3 or 4 goals up at quarter time. They should have kicked 6 first quarter goals. Instead, they lost by 6 because they hit the post maybe 4 times. I think Pickett hit the post twice on his own. Horrendous. It was horrendous to view it because they had Van Rooyen having one of his best games of his career. On the lead, he looked unbeatable, and they just butchered. I was just so annoyed because there was 88,000 there, Woods. They all wanted to see a good game of football, and Melbourne robbed that from them. Horrendous. So they're the winners this week. Equal winners, Melbourne and the Bombers. Don't want to talk more about it. Let's talk about who can win the flag. Brisbane, very, very close to having the X taken off, but like I said before, I just cannot trust them, and I'm putting an X through Melbourne.
Oh, Melbourne.
They are done. I think they actually, at this rate, I think their draw will help them a lot. They get teams well below in the next few weeks, but they won't make the top 4. I'm almost certain about that, and I should have pulled the trigger and put them outside my top 6 in that preview that we did a couple of weeks ago at the halfway point. Because I think they get West Coast again. They get Richmond again, I think. But then they play the teams like Brisbane, who are on the up. Essendon, which, I don't know how that one's going to go. Freo, like these are teams that at the moment, if they don't figure something out, the Giants, they're just going to get walloped. And without Christian Petrarca for who knows how long, that could be 8 weeks. I think him and Gawn are the only ones that really care and put in for that team. So I think they're absolutely no chance at the flag. And they've sort of got to more look like, all right, how do we rebuild this so we can contend, or are we just going to bottom out? All the other teams, Port Adelaide had the bye, but I think they're a team that's going to...
6 down to 7 teams for you.
Yeah, I think Port Adelaide are a team that's going to finish really well at the end of the home and away, but I don't know how I can trust them either, but I'm going to keep them on there. That's my list for me. I'm not going to take anyone else off. But Melbourne, extra.
Okay, so I think I'm similar. I'm going to just put them on. I actually had to craft it, so I got the X out there, but it's one of those things where 1-2 teams that you go, okay, yeah, I just can't see them doing it. And it's got to the point where that's it. It's time just to kind of say goodbye to them. It's... There's a few others that I thought about. I've been thinking about this all weekend, and I'm there going, I've already put the thing on Brisbane, but I'm actually going to go one step further and saying if they lose to St Kilda, they're not playing finals.
Yeah, well...
Now, I just want to go back to yours for a second because I've actually missed one team. You've got 8. Yeah, you've got 8 there. I think we're... Yeah. I'm actually changing it to yours, going back and forth. We've got the same at the moment. We've got the same 8 teams. This is the first time.
Yeah.
Because if I'm going there, you can see no differences, but I can actually see that I'm like, I can't even tell whose that is because it's one of ours. Well, that's both of ours at the moment. So there's 8 teams: Carlton, Collingwood, Essendon, Fremantle, Geelong, GWS, Port Adelaide and Sydney. And I think that's a true representation. I think for me, if I was to rank them right now, it'd be Sydney, Carlton, Collingwood, Port Adelaide Giants,
I'd have
Fremantle, Essendon. Geelong would be it'd be Geelong, GWS, Port Adelaide, then Fremantle, then Essendon. I think Essendon are almost the team there where their lack of finals victories, their lack of finals experience will cost them in September, and their lack of beating the higher sides is one that I'm there going, okay, I'm bullish about them. I'm not going to put the red X on them just yet, but they need a victory over someone. Yes, they drew against Collingwood. I will give them that. But they need a victory over one of the sides that don't have the red X before I actually go.
Yep. I'd probably have Sydney and then about 5 different divisions of football and then everybody else. Because that's just the way it is.
That's fair.
And the only thing stopping them is if they're going to burn out or not. I don't think they will. Speaking of the Swans, they held the belt in incredible fashion at the SCG. The crowd was going bananas.
I think they were almost knocked out. If you we talk about the wrestling sense, we talk about boxing sense.
Well on the canvas.
They were on the canvas. It was the last man standing, and it was about a 7 or an 8 count. And then they get up, and then they just Super Cena it. Now, if you're a wrestling fan, you'll understand that. But they just turned it on from the moment they got the first sniff.
It was almost like a video game where you're sort of like, I'm bored of just belting everybody. I'll give them a head start. And then in the second quarter, you go into gaming position, you flick the switch, and they just play football that is untouchable. And they keep the belt.
Now, we didn't mention this, and I mentioned this sorry to cut you off here, but should have mentioned this when we're talking about Sydney and Geelong. Now, if you look at the worm, that is so great. You can see the scoreline. Sydney didn't kick a goal
for 45 minutes.
And 8 minutes, it was about 8 minutes on the clock before half time. I'll go 9 minutes just for thing. Say 9 minutes before half time. Had not kicked a goal. At half time, the scores were 5 goals. 6, 36, 6-5, 41. 5 goals Sydney kicked in 9 minutes of football.
The fear that would put into a team after you've just done that yourselves in the first quarter. Sydney, and against a team that you had killed twice. Like the last time these two teams played regular season, the same thing. Pummeling. Grand final, pummeling. The fear that the Cats would have had, and they will say they had no fear.
Geelong just...
But the fear when
didn't
that sort
know
of thing happens,
how to respond.
It's untouchable
and Sydney
footy.
were able to flick the switch. I had to bring that up because there was a stat I mentioned to Noah Fisher at halftime. I realised, thinking about it, I was like, when was their first goal? Because it just seemed like they were raining goals before halftime. And I'm sorry to Lorenzo for talking about it.
But yeah, it's just untouchable footy, and you just have to love it. Like, yes, they're so far ahead, and people will complain like, "Oh, it's not competitive." Or I'm an F1 fan, so maybe I'm conditioned to it, but I just love it because it's the AFL football being played to the highest possible ability, and you love seeing it. They will defend their belt this weekend at the Adelaide Oval against the Crows, who are just licking their wounds right now. There's feathers everywhere in Adelaide because they were just ripped apart by the Tigers. Everyone's going for their heads. Matty Nix is sweating, and they get the best team in the comp, trying to finally get a win when they should have had it on Thursday night last week. But that's a huge game. It's 15th versus 1st. I think the Swans will continue to keep the belt in that one. Other games in round 14, you starts with no more Thursday night footy. I'm going to do a Jared Waitley here and say that's just blasphemy. He was hot on it. I'm hot on it too. It's not good enough. But we wait another day, and it will be Friday night footy at the Gabba, the Lions and the Saints, and this is basically, you win, you can still play finals. If you lose, you are done.
I've said this multiple times, and I've said it to people on the weekend. The Brisbane Saints game is, you put a line, season done to the loser.
Yep.
Now the winner is a slight heartbeat. No, not much, but it's basically saying you're not dead yet. You've got a little bit of life left in you, and it's what you do after that. But it's the hospital machines. You know how it's just a flat line and it goes beep.
It's basically
beep.
what it is.
That's all it is.
13th and 14th as we sit.
It's going to be a game where if you want to have a sniff at finals, which I don't think either team can realistically make. However, you write Brisbane off and they can go on. They've got the experience.
Just to give you a little snapshot of the ladder, the Lions and the Saints are 13th and 14th. They've got 22 and 20 points respectively. All the teams around this, and this chaos in the ladder has happened because, yes, Brisbane and St Kilda haven't had great seasons, and I might be putting too much credit on the Hawks here, but the Hawks have beaten the Lions and the Saints, who are the two below them. The Dogs and the Giants are two in front of them, and all of a sudden, the Giants on 28, Suns, Demons, all on 28, the Bulldogs and the Hawks are on 24. That's the race for the 8, and it's basically within one win outside of Brisbane, which is 1.5 wins.
Well, you got to look at it.
Absolute chaos down there.
I've got to look at it from St Kilda.
There's only one spot that can be grabbed from those teams.
Well, Saints are 20th, right? Oh, sorry, 20th.
20 points.
20 points, sitting in 14th. 8th is, they're 2 games out of the 8. So I'm holding no
As is the
illusions.
importance of this game.
However, between 4th and where St Kilda sit, there's 12 points. There's 3 games. Any of those teams, and that's 4th to 14th. There's 3 games. But realistically, take it down to 8th, 7th, or 8th. I only think you're looking 7 to about the 12th mark. Hawthorn, I realistically think they can actually make it depending on how they go this week and following weeks.
So the Hawks, Dogs and D's sort of have enough games. They're close enough where they have probably 2 mulligans up their sleeve, or 1. They have 1 loss that might cost them, but they could still make it after their 1 loss. But the Saints and the Lions, as I was trying to make that point, and my point was, they can't. They've got no more possible mulligans out of their next remaining fixtures. So that's a massive Friday night clash. at the Gabba. The Dogs and the Dockers kick off Saturday action. That's going to be massive because the Dogs need this win. The Dockers...
It goes back to what we've just been saying.
They're in the 8 right now, and they need to stay in there. Then Dustin Martin's 300th. I wish I could get to this game, but again, scheduling is utterly horrific. I don't know why they couldn't late flex these games and swap them around. Either way, the Tigers host the Hawks at 4:35 on Saturday afternoon. The Hawks looking to jump into the 8. The Tigers looking to win their second in a row and win for Dustin Martin. It'll be a huge game. Congratulations to Dusty, one of the greats. There's no doubt about that. The Crows and the Swans, the heavyweight bout will be Saturday night footy. And with a bunch of buys, there's only 2 on your Sunday. It's the Kangaroos and the Pies. And the Giants and the Power, which is huge to end the round. 2 teams looking to finish in the top 4. And that'll be your footy for another week. And that's enough footy for this week. Make sure you catch all the games this weekend, however you usually watch them. And something else that you'll want to catch is the Cricket World Cup, the T20 World Cup. And it is Australia at the moment 3-0, extending their mega streak, which I'll mention in a moment.
Sorry, I'm not sure. Can you just repeat that?
So
3-0.
We're 3-0 in this World Cup. And it increases the streak now to, this graphic is incorrect.
I was about to say
yesterday. 12 straight wins at World Cups. Obviously, that goes back to last year's successful one-day World Cup win in India, when nobody thought we could, after 2 losses to start that competition. If my memory serves me right, we had 2 losses at the start.
That is incredible, though.
We have gone 12 straight. And sure, the first couple opponents weren't great. Oman, pretty easy victory. Today, earlier this morning, made sure to get this result in. Absolutely thumped Namibia. They made 72, and we got our 3rd win. But this is remarkable. At the cricket at its highest level,
I truly think that
to win 12 in a row,
culture in Australia is being bred off a winning.
It is, and we talked about it last year when all we could say was
winning breeds winning.
We expect to win.
Yeah,
we expect to be in the finals. Because that's our culture, and we've done it so often that it's just the expectation.
We've done it for decades. That I must admit, I do love it in this aspect of it isn't good enough to finish semi-finals. It isn't good enough to finish runner-up.
And it's certainly
not good enough. It's not good enough just to be there. It's, hold on, you're playing at the highest level. You're wearing the Australian colours. You're wearing the Australian gear. You are expected when you're on the field to play your best. And that's what they do time in, time out.
And it helps them win from nowhere. Like, it helps them win, especially behind Pat Cummins, like these last few years, in games that we had no right winning. They're included in this. So included in this is there's no words for the performance Maxwell had against Afghanistan when we were, I think it was like 7 for 80, chasing 300 and something. That one's in there. The final, the games against India, like those games that Hawthorn, Australia should not be winning. We win, and now that expectation reigns supreme because we're 3-0 now, and now the expectation is we make the final from here. We are definitely playing in the finals. We're on top of Group B at the moment. We're going to be there regardless if we finish 2nd or 1st. We want to finish 1st, obviously. Another team's in there playing quite well. Obviously, India. The West Indies at home doing quite well. But those wins, obviously the first one came against Oman when we were in a little bit of trouble, similar to Australian identity. We were about 4 for not very many, chasing a decent total in the 100s. And Marcus Stoinis just decided to go ballistic. After a few months ago, he was left out. He was not really considered for Australian duties. They didn't like his form. He went over to the IPL. He made a 150 or something crazy. And then he comes out to bat after Glenn Maxwell made a golden plugger. And he just decides he's going to absolutely tear apart not only the game, but the stadium. I'm not sure why you have solar panels at a cricket stadium, but Marcus Stoinis...
I understand why you have them at a cricket stadium. I don't know why you have them in distance where somebody like Marcus Stoinis can just go...
Well, this
bang.
is not his fault.
Like, honestly, you've got to... If you're building a cricket stadium or you're putting solar panels at a cricket ground, you go, where's the least likely place somebody will hit a 6? Let's put it there.
Yeah.
Oh, Marcus Stoinis is playing. Okay, how far can he hit it? Okay, we're not putting it anywhere near that because if that happens.
Put him on the other side. Like, roofs go like this. So put him on this side that's not facing the ground, maybe? I don't know. Maybe he'd still find a way to hit it. He hit a couple on the roof. He hit this one onto the solar panel and smashed it. Not his fault. Hopefully they give that to him and sign it and he can frame it.
I reckon you should just auction it off.
But a massive 50 from Stoyne set us up. Oh, and then, by the way, we weren't actually chasing that much. We were defending the title, which he got us up upwards of 150, which never looked like happening when he came to the wicket. And then he just went out and took 3 wickets. And I don't think anyone's ever done that in T20 World Cup games, as I remember the commentators saying. So just proving his importance, mega. Like, just more than he could have imagined. That set us up. We had the Poms on Saturday night or Sunday morning, however you want to look at it. I was thinking about watching this one. It was at 3 a.m. I ended up choosing sleep, which is odd for me. I usually go with sport instead.
I was going to say, that does sound odd being an F1 fan.
The reigning world champs easily beaten by our Aussies. And that's a little bit of payback because they did win their last title, the last T20 World Cup, on our shores at the MCG. I did have to watch that one. Live wasn't great. We defeated them by 36 runs, and there was no one in particular that dominated. There was 4 scores in the 30s. They just kept building. They kept plunging on. They just kept soldiering on no matter how many wickets were falling around. A lot of the top order, obviously, making starts, but just playing aggressively, which is how the Aussies play these days. Got up over 200. That was easily enough. 4 of the bowlers took at least 1 wicket. A couple of them took 2, and we took care of the Poms, who just didn't really show up in that one. And then this morning, as I mentioned, defeated Namibia by 4 wickets after, Adam Zampa took 4 wickets in the first innings. And they looked like a bunch of, I think one of the commentators actually said this during the call, that at times Namibia looked like a few school kids trying to figure out how to hit Warney. Like, it was like, he was just like spinning them both ways. The Namibian fellas were trying so hard, but it was a tough pitch to bat on. It was spinning a lot, and Zamps just had a field day. I think he finished with about 4 for 13, and he became the first Australian male to take 100 wickets in T20 cricket. He's one of our best, and he is a reason why, no matter his form, he is on the plane, on the bus to every single Australian white ball series, because he is just phenomenal. When the whips are cracking and we're in tournament mode or need a win in a series, Samps just comes up and dominates, and we absolutely love him. He's a little bit of a weird fella, but we love him. First Aussie to break the ton, like I said. But outside of the green and gold, there's been some massive results, Woods, and T20 cricket is just, it's amazing how it brings other countries in that have never been good countries at cricket, that have never been cricketing nations, or maybe they have been, but they haven't been in the top flight. Afghanistan have defeated New Zealand easily too. I think they bowled them out for 70-something.
Well, I think it's Rashid Khan plays for them, doesn't he?
Rashid and Faruqi, 4 wickets apiece. So 8 wickets between them. 8 of the 11 wickets between the left-arm quick Faruqi and, of course, Rashid Khan, who we know from the Big Bash. 4 wickets apiece. And the Kiwis, who are looking to go back to the finals, they had a pretty good run last T20 World Cup. They're always contending. They're outside the top 2 in their pool at the moment. They look like they're not going to get through. And this was a massive result. Bowled them out.
I don't think it was the biggest result you could have expected.
And everyone's like, sort of expects things like this. Afghanistan have been on the come up for a few years.
Afghanistan with Rashid Khan has actually been great, but I think,
especially in T20 cricket, which is open to everybody these days because it's so accessible to play, a lot of nations are picking it up.
And you get Rashid going to the Big Bash, but
one of the nations that has picked it up, and I'm not sure if this is because they were forced to host it or because they actually really like cricket, the United States of America, Woods. I spoke about them earlier because they defeated Canada, and we're like, oh yeah, Aaron Jones hit 10 sixes, pretty big, but does it mean anything because it's Canada? Like, they're a bunch of hockey players. This mob, the United States of America, defeated Pakistan, one of the oldest cricketing nations, one of the most famous cricketing nations, and mind you, the team that made the grand final, the final last T20 World Cup, defeated them in a super over. So they've learnt the game. They were clutch in a super over, and they got the win in incredible circumstances, and it's unbelievable. Their very first World Cup, if I'm not mistaken, on the home shores. Maybe it's the home ground what's the opposite of a curse? Good karma. When you
the
host,
home ground
you tend to get wins that you don't usually get. Maybe it's that, or maybe they just play great cricket. Just unreal. Defeated Pakistan in the Super Over, and that's caused a bit of a boil over in the World Cup as it stands. There's still a fair few games to go, but we're potentially, at the moment, if it finishes as it stands, the United States, Afghanistan and Scotland would go through to the finals, and England, New Zealand and Pakistan would miss out. So plenty of cricket still to be played. Make sure you catch it, because it's just phenomenal. You might see upsets. You might see teams like the US going through and playing in the Super 8s. You just never know what's going to happen. Make sure you catch it. It's still going on every day. Some of the times aren't too great, but shouldn't be too bad for you. If you really want to watch it, it's amazing cricket, and it's T20, so it goes pretty quickly. I think you can catch it on Amazon Prime, who have the rights.
Amazon Prime, yep.
Something else that is concluded, but I wanted to follow it up because I mentioned a few weeks ago, is the French Open. Fortunately, Alex de Minaur finished his run in that quarterfinal against Alexander Zverev, or might have been the semi even, against Zverev, who ended up making the final. So not a bad effort from the Demon to lose to the German. He ends up making the final against this fella, Carlos Alcaraz, who is probably my favourite tennis player outside of the Demon at the moment in the men's draw. It was Rafa, but obviously he's close to retirement. So I've picked another Spaniard, and it is Carlos Alcaraz. He's now run a major on every surface, and he's still only a young fella. He plays tennis. He's got every single string to his bow. He can sort of play fast, he can play aggressive, he can play defensive, and he can beat everybody. He's big and powerful, and he's just a great guy to follow. So congratulations to Carlos. Unfortunately, the other Aussie that was still in the draw, Matty Ebden, lost the semi with Rohan Bopana, the 43-year-old Indian teammate of Matty Ebden. They lost in the semi-final, so no championship for them. But yes, the French Open has concluded with 2 Opens to play, Wimbledon and the US. All of those guys, as I mentioned, Matty Ebden, Rohan Bopana, Alex de Minaur, and of course Zverev and Alcaraz, the big guy, will all be going for wins there, as will the new world number 1, the first Italian world number 1, Yannick Sinner. It's all to play for there, as it is back on the shores of Oz, where Rugby League State of Origin had an absolute belter of a game 1. We're happy because we're Maroons fans, but it was so action-packed. We had a Maroons try early, and then on the kickoff, basically, on the second tackle, I think it was, Reece Walsh, the Queensland fullback, got the footy, and he was absolutely poleaxed.
I'd say this was exciting,
by Joseph
however,
Suaalii.
It was exciting for a different reason. Like, usually you want a close game, but State of Origin, you always have stories. And sorry to cut you off, but it's always about the stories.
And this was mentioned, it was not mentioned, like it wasn't, how do I say it? It was mentioned throughout the broadcast. Like there wasn't a spare couple minutes where this wasn't talked about. As big of a story as it was, fair enough.
It was, because he was the Suaalii,
I think it is.
He was sent off. And New South Wales had played one
contest,
short,
which is a record.
Yeah, I was like, they had to play one short the whole game. But the story in that was, Reece Walsh, a few people might have had him in their multis. I know I did. Luckily, I got avoided. But forgetting about the punting side of things, it was actually it added a new depth to State of Origin. Yeah. Like, if these guys, I don't think Joseph will play next game because of 5-match ban, 5-week ban. It wasn't great, and it was Joseph's first game as well. I'm pretty sure it was his Origin debut, and his captain, I think it's Jake Travojevic, was. I should have got the photo of him up, because when the ref said, "Mate," first of all, he come up to Joe and his skipper and said, "All right, I don't want you to say anything, okay? You're off." And Turbo was just, his look on the New South Wales skipper's face was just shock. He was not happy. But for the rest of the game, the whole discussion was that a send-off? Was that not a send-off? I think for all mainly AFL fans, and sort of, we can call ourselves casual rugby league fans, that's just a send-off, because the bloke was in the most groggy, ugly way. Like, Reece was sort of just out looking, staring. His face was emotionless, blank. Like, he couldn't move. He copped the full brunt of the cherry middle of Joseph Suaalii's shoulder.
to the face. And yes, he might have been falling, but that's just a high hit, huge contact. He's knocked the guy out. I think, and I'm not a massive rugby league guy, and I'll admit that, but that has just got to be a send-off. So I think it was the right call. Obviously, they can't quite believe it here, but I think they made the right call. It was well done by the ref. And then basically from that moment, the Maroons just turned it on. The Hammer with another Origin hat-trick. He was unstoppable. The guy is he is so quick, so elusive, and exciting. I love it when the old Dolphin celebration comes up after he scores a try. And all the Maroon fans, even though there wasn't many, because this was in Sydney and the whole stands were all blue, they were going crazy. Benny Hunt was great as well. The whole team just really put in. The Blues did really well to keep it a game at times, but in the second half, it sort of got away from them quite easily. A good effort to play with one man down, and it just sets up a massive game, huge game at the G in a couple weeks' time. I don't know why they space them out so much. I keep getting the dates wrong. Either way, we'll be there at the MCG. The Blues looking to keep their Origin dreams alive. A few other dreams looking to stay alive are the dreams of our Olympic swimmers, or hopeful Olympic swimmers. Our best swimmers at the moment are up in Brisbane, if I'm not mistaken, Woods, for the Oz titles, the Oz swimming trials, and those words probably strike a little bit of fear in any swimmer that is going to them, because it's probably their biggest. I think a few of them even say the Oz swim trials are bigger than the Olympics for us, because if you don't do well there, you're not going.
It's that first step, and because of, you think of Australian swimming, where it's like the Australian cricket team. It's bred success, bred winning.
There's a reason why the swimming at Olympic Games. There's a reason why the swimming at Olympics is always the main primetime viewing at the start of the tournament. It's the reason why it is scheduled at a time where Americans and Australians can watch it, because the rivalry between not only us and America, but now China, a few of the other Asian nations, is huge. Swimming is we're amazing in athletics. The Boomers, the Opals are phenomenal as well. The Matildas are great. We have, people in other disciplines, the rowing and things like that are amazing. But there's nothing that comes close to swimming. And I don't care who you are, if you like sport, if you like other sport or not, you turn on the swimming when the Olympics are on. You just do. Because you know that Australia puts so much into it, and we are a swimming nation, and when the Olympics come round, it is, can Australia beat those US guys? It used to be, Thorpe going against Phelps, which was very hard because Phelps is the GOAT. These days, it's Ledecky and Titmus. It's just never stops. The Chinese swimmers are always great, whether they're cheating or not. I don't want to bring it up, but I will. Men's, women's, every discipline, it's just massive. So these titles are huge, and luckily for us, Ariane Titmus is in form. She was bare hundredths, I think, off her own world record at the trials the other night. We've also got all of our other stars going ahead. It obviously, as you see, finishes this weekend. It is huge. And our Olympic team that are going to go into this cauldron in Paris to be watched by the whole world is going to be picked out of these trials.
So it's going to be exciting to see, and I can't wait to see who comes out. There's a few. We talk about sports stories all the time. There's going to be a lot of stories to come out of it, and who knows? Hopefully, a few records come Olympic time in Paris.
Well, hats off to them, because I could never swim. I just get
neither could I.
So they're doing amazing things. I don't know how they handle the nerves and being able to swim like that so quickly and so well. So hats off to them all. All the best as well. What else is going on?
Well, up in Queensland as well, but this just an hour or so, Gold Coast. I think it's an hour from Brisbane, but the Bowls Australian Open is on at the moment. June 8th it started, and it's going on till June 21. It's not as big as the Olympic trials and not as big as the Olympics, but
it's one of the most underrated events.
Anybody can enter this, right? It's
Woods was a sniff.
Such a great. Well,
thought about it.
Next year I might just
an extra time in. Bowls team next year. It's going to be there. Stay tuned.
But that's the thing. Anybody, if you start playing bowls tomorrow, next year you can put your name down. It's such great because there's the qualifiers, but the qualifiers are actually part of the event. So you have so many. It's not like the Oz Open in tennis, where it's 128 people and it's knockouts. You have pools first. So like the Cricket World Cup, the Soccer World Cup.
Win and get in, yeah.
Yeah, you play a few games. You're guaranteed to at least bowl a few bowls.
On the Goldie. Great facilities up there too on the Goldie.
Oh, you could play against the world's best. I know I played in the Australian Open when it was actually held in Melbourne, and you had to go through a qualification process during that time, and I came up against a Malaysian international, and he was just on fire from the get-go. I couldn't get a sniff. I could bowl reasonable, but all these bowls were within a mat's length, and if you understand bowls, you'll understand that. But it's just good to see, and we can't wait to see in 2 weeks' time when we're sitting here. We can go through the results of that
Champs.
and see if there's any familiar names. Can't go past people like Aaron Wilson, people like Carla Kristenic.
Remember we spoke about them last year.
There's a lot of them.
Had a lot of success lately.
Yeah, so it's just exciting to see. And
you can catch it on Fox
Alan
as well.
Ryan, catch it on Fox. I think Rainmaker are producing it.
Yeah, the bowl show as well. You can catch on Fox, made out of the Rainmaker Studios, of course. A great show as well. Great production, and it is great. It's obviously supported well, but it looks like so much fun to even to go watch it, let alone play. And like I said before, one of the more underrated events.
It's one of the only sports that I know where you can rock up on a Saturday at your local club and actually come up against the world's best. You can't do that in cricket, just rock up to the park and there's David Warner, Steve Smith, the Australian cricket team. You can't do that in tennis where Roger Federer and Novak Djokovic, Rafael Nadal are just there, having a hit against you. Golf, you're not going to come up against Tiger Woods at your local golf course.
It's special.
You're not going to come up against I've mentioned last week I'm playing footy. I'm not going to come up against Dustin Martin and all that. I might come against a few retired blokes, I don't know, but this is the only sport I know where you can actually have a beer with the world's best.
While they're still playing the world comps. Yeah.
While they're still the world's best.
Yeah. Unbelievable stuff. Something else that is unbelievable, special, call it what you like. It is my man, Daniel Ricciardo. I speak of my weekly wonder, and of course, I speak of Aussies around the grounds. Daniel Ricciardo has finally scored his first points in Formula One in 2024. He got a couple at one of his favourite tracks, Canada. I'm pretty sure he got his first win in Formula One there all those years ago. He had to battle. He found pace in the wet in practice. He got flamed in the media by a former world champion, Jacques Villeneuve. Said he shouldn't be in F1 anymore. He said he's got too long of a leash. That he shouldn't just keep handing him things. He shouldn't be able to give all these excuses and stay there. Well, wasn't Villeneuve proven wrong, because basically a few hours after he said that to Sky Sports Media, Danny Rick came out and qualified P5. He put his RB in P5, which is basically as high as you could possibly get. And
sorry, I just had to read that quote. Just had to read that quote right there.
He came out, sorry for the coarse language, he did say shot at the end. Unbelievable. And he was so quick. Both of the RBs in the top 10 as well, which for a team that is sort of Red Bull Racing's little brother, to be up there setting times, setting paces, mere hundredths off the McLarens, the Red Bull of Max Verstappen, and the Mercedes is such a massive effort. And it was real Danny Rick. He was back. And I was so happy. I was smiling ear to ear just seeing him push so hard and do so well, especially after what he copped in the media. But he doesn't care. He just makes it a bit of a meme. He has a bit of a laugh, and he has that smile on his face, regardless of what happens. It was great to see. You can obviously read that. I'm not going to read it out for you. And then at the start of the race, he had a rough start. He actually false started, so he got a penalty for that. He lost positions off the rip. He was outside the points for most of the race. And then luckily there was carnage. There was 5 different cars who didn't finish. 2 Ferraris, which is shocking. They actually didn't qualify in the top 10 for the first time in ages, ruining a few of their streaks. And then Sainz crashed. Leclerc just had to get rid of the car. Sargent, Albon crashed. And then all of a sudden, Daniel Ricciardo up into the points. His first of the season. I think it was 2. I think he finished in 8th, which is a huge result. On the other hand, the other Aussie, Oscar Piastri, was so consistent, so great once again, but unfortunately got outdone, as did his teammate Lando Norris, by the late safety car, and the Mercedes behind them were able to put on new tyres and finish ahead. So another top 5 finish for OP, not a podium though, unfortunately. I think that one's coming though. Even a win might be down the track for him. It was a bit of it was wet in Montreal, and then it was dry, and then it was wet, and then it was dry, and then it was dry again. And there was 5 DNFs. It was possibly the best race I've watched all season for entertainment value. And my boy, back on the top step, Max Verstappen. One of the best races from him I've seen him win, because it wasn't easy. He wasn't in the best car at all. He had a lot of issues. He couldn't take curbs for the last half of the race. There was cars that were a lot quicker in different conditions. There was changing conditions. And it was just, prime Verstappen, showing that he is still the best driver on the grid.
Yeah, I think I've got to actually have a go at you here. Is he an honorary Australian at this point? Because he comes up every F1 segment in Aussies around the ground.
Aussies and Dutchmen around the ground.
So I thought we might as well make him an honorary Aussie just for this segment, because of the amount of times he's come up.
Well, he wins a lot, Woods. So
Well, he wins I guess that breeds the winning culture of Australia.
he's Australian, and maybe the Dutch can have that culture as well. Shout out to Max. His teammate, though, this is the big story coming out of F1 at the moment. Sergio Perez just signed a new deal. I mentioned it last podcast. He's still at Red Bull Racing for another 2 years. Danny Rick wanted that seat, but since signing that contract, Perez has gone 0 points, 0 points. Another stinker. He crashed into the barriers. He was one of the did not finishers. Ruined his back wing, and now he's got a penalty for it because he trudged on with things falling off his car, which is incredibly dangerous, leaving debris everywhere. And he didn't finish. And he didn't qualify inside the top 15 either. He was very slow. So it's opening the door for Daniel. If he continue his form, he might be a sniff, as much as Villeneuve and a few others are going to really not like that. He might be a sniff. Ricciardo's contract is not quite confirmed yet. Tsunoda has been signed on at RB, his teammate. But big news there, so make sure you follow that one. The Socceroos, Woods, got a win overnight against Palestine, 5-0. So they're continuing their good run for World Cup qualification. Speaking of the World Cup 2026, which will be in the States. And speaking of the States, the NBA Finals are on. 2 games have been 1-1. Unfortunately, not by our boys. Not by the Mavs. Dante Exum and Josh Green, the 2 Aussies you see pictured here. We're all happy after winning the Western Conference Finals, but in the NBA Finals against the Boston Celtics, they had a blowout in Game 1. They just didn't show up. They just couldn't quite defend. They weren't shooting the ball very well at all, and they got outdone by the returning Kristaps Porzingis, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and the Celtics. Then in Game 2 was a bit more of a fight back, but the Dallas Mavs couldn't quite get it done. So they're in a little bit of an 0-2 hole, but luckily for our Aussie boys, they've got the next 2 games at home in Dallas, which will be huge. The crowd will be so loud because Dallas fans have been just begging for any of their teams to make the finals and anything for a few years after the Cowboys just always contend but don't make it. So I can't wait for that. Game 2 will have already started if you're watching this on your Thursday afternoon down in Dallas. So make sure you catch our Aussies there. They're playing solid minutes, but haven't got the win on the board yet. They need 4 for their championship. So good luck to them. But we're going to head back to the shores of Oz. We're going through local footy, and he was my weekly local footy wonder last week, Woods. But he's done himself even better this last week. I had to put him on there again. It's Jack Hutchinson, my good mate, my neighbour. Made his debut in the number 44 for the West Coast Eagles. There's his amazing, beautiful family. His sister Libby, mum and dad Joe and Paul, and beautiful girlfriend Ava there. Before his first game, I mentioned before, wasn't the best day to play for West Coast because they were just butchering the footy left, right and centre. But Jack did really well. 4 disposals, I think he finished with a number of tackles, but a clutch handball under pressure, setting up a really clutch late goal, which sparked West Coast comeback. They eventually took the lead in the last quarter, didn't have enough in the tank to get the job done. So he didn't get his first win, Jack, but he played his first game at AFL footy, better than what I've done. So hats off to you, Hutch. And I'm sure we'll see more of the number 44 this year in the, what do you call it? The gold and blue.
Blue and yellow.
The blue and yellow over in Perth. Their next game, I think they have the bye this week, and then they've got the Bombers. So, huge game there. I think that one's in Melbourne too. You might even see me down at that one. Even closer to home, though, I called a ripper on Saturday in the West Gippsland comp, and we're officially halfway through the year. And this is how the senior ladder sits, and you'll notice that the top 4, or the top 6 really, very, very close. We've got Nanogoon on top, and then Phillip Island and Coralline, who had a draw a few weeks ago, only 2 points behind. And it'd be wide open. And the reigning premiers...
Number 4th looks very
The reigning
familiar.
premiers, with their 2 consecutive losses a fortnight ago, and then 2 weeks ago, and a few weeks ago, whatever, got back on track against Bunyip on the weekend, but 2 consecutive losses before that, has them in 4th. But then basically for me, everyone down to Kilcunda Bass can make the finals. The top 6 make the finals. The top 2 get the double chance. So all to play for there. 9 rounds done, 9 rounds to go. I can't wait. And in the other league down in Gippsland, the other big one of the results, a unique result you probably never see. So the senior football finished in a draw, you see there at the bottom. And the A-grade netball, the first grade of netball played alongside at both clubs between Morwell and Traralgon. This was played on Sunday. A draw as well. So a double draw.
You don't usually see that now. I know in the past few weeks we've done what caught our eye and the big scores, but I think this would have to actually top it in terms of the likelihood of it happening where you're playing the same team in netball and the seniors. The only thing I would go would be if the under-19s, the resis, the seniors, and the netball all draw. I think that'd probably be the only thing that could outdo that, but still... very fascinating. I do want to note, though, that Traralgon were held goalless in the first quarter, but then went on to kick 5 goals in the second?
Yeah, and the reason it was a draw is one of the Traralgon forwards had a kick to win it, and he kicked it behind. So, tied the scores.
I was going to say,
barely,
to be 21 points down at quarter time to have a kick to win the game is... pretty impressive.
Pretty impressive, yes. And Morwell defeated the reigning premiers, I think 3-time reigning premiers, Leongatha, a few weeks ago, and now they've taken down Traralgon, who is in the top 4 themselves. So having a good season, the Tigers. And back to the West Gippsland comp. Make sure, I know I've given this one a fair bit of promo, but if you're pumped up by my promo of the West Gippy comp, if you're pumped up and you want to see some country footy, come down to Bunyip on the 13th of July because you will see big Shane Mumford run out there with Isaac Smith, the 2022 Norm Smith medalist for the Bulldogs. I'm going to be there. Come say hello. Come watch some AFL greatness. Come watch some local footy greatness on the 13th of July. I can't wait for that. I'll see you there. That's for sure.
Coming down to the Metro stuff and my local footy, Blackburn had the week off, so... we don't play King's birthday. I was about to say Queen's birthday. So used to saying Queen's birthday, but King's birthday. EFNL don't play King's birthday weekend. I think there was one game. It might have involved Bowen, who Blackburn will be travelling to Bowen Park on Saturday to take on. It's very close to my heart, Bowen. Dad used to play Bowen Bowls Club, which is right next to the Oval, but is no more. It's tennis courts now. Oh. So I kind of grew up there. And so I always do like venturing down to watch Bowen versus Blackburn and cheering on the Burners. It's kind of it's one of those things where it hurts to kind of go to, and it's kind of this off topic of it's still there but it's not. Like the land's there, and like I've got these memories of this place that it just no longer looks anything like what it was. Like the building is new, the tennis courts looks nothing like a bowls club, but Blackburn versus Bowen on Saturday, and hopefully we can get the win. But as I mentioned last week, I'll just spruik it again. I'm putting on the boots. I'm actually getting out there. I had a training session last night, and I'm pushing myself. I'm not just going the easy route.
And if you missed it, this fella has, outside of a little bit at school, never played a organised game of football.
Never, as I said, club football debut. So
get down there.
I'm looking forward to it. Look, I've got the eye on the debut in about a month's time. It is in July.
Stay tuned if you want to figure out more details. I'm not going to let you off. You're going to have to watch the podcast to find out. Have you got your number, though?
I've got my number sorted, but that's going to be another thing I'll release in the coming weeks. Once I finally get the jumper, I'll do the jumper reveal and the club reveal, as I haven't actually mentioned it. There might be a hint in the graphic here, but not too much. But
Make sure you watch the podcast to find out, that's for sure. You will find out too, and it is coming, and it will be a massive day. I'm even thinking of going down and training with you boys just to make sure you're doing all right, Woods. I can't be there on the day, so I'm going to have to try and get around it somehow.
Might have to get you to come down, film some content for us.
Exactly. And make sure you guys watch the pod. Find out more about that and find out what we've got to say about all the sport that will be happening in the next week. We've got Cricket World Cup, we've got AFL, we've got NBA Finals, and we've got swimming trials, bowls open, everything you could ask for. Make sure you catch it all yourself. Like, subscribe, comment, let us know what you want more of or less of, and we'll see you next time.